VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And friends, thank you for joining us today. Breaking news today, a shakeup in the president's cabinet. President Trump has removed the former South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem as the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. President Trump thanked her for her service as Secretary and announced that he was moving her to be Special Envoy for the Shield of the Americas, a new security initiative in the Western Hemisphere, which he will be formally announced on Saturday. There's been concerns on both sides of the aisle in regard to the leadership of Kristi Noem. And in her place, he is nominating Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma, the only Native American in the Senate. President Trump said that he will work tirelessly to keep our border secure, stop migrant crime, murders, and other criminals from illegally entering our country, and the scourge of illegal drugs, and make America safe again. We'll touch on that issue, but today we're also going to be discussing further the ongoing crisis in the Middle East with Israel and the U.S. jointly working to neutralize the threat from Iran, not only with nuclear aspirations, but also their intense missile building. Keep in mind the regime has referred to Israel as the little Satan and the U.S. as the big Satan. Joining us today, we welcome back Shahram Hadian. He is the founder of Truth and Love Ministry. He is a Christian pastor and a former Muslim. Shahram was born in Iran, came to America in 1978 to escape an oppressive Islamic regime, and committed his life to Jesus Christ in 1999. He does have an extensive background, not only as a pastor, but as a former law officer, a teacher, and a coach, servant leader in his community as well. Shahram, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Jim, for having me on the program again.
So just before we get to Iran, any comment that you may have about Kristi Noem now out as Secretary of Homeland Security?
Just that I think that I saw that coming, especially with the hearings, the Senate hearings, where you had Republicans kind of turning on her as well. I think that, it was a volatile situation with all this attention on ICE and people are uncomfortable. So I don't know. I wasn't sure if I ever thought that was a good position for her in the beginning. But nevertheless, I don't think I'm surprised that this has come. Yeah. I just hope that whoever comes in will not have a soft sell on the need for immigration enforcement and removing all these undocumented illegals from our nation. I hope that continues and they don't go soft on that.
Shahram, you were born and lived in Iran. You escaped this oppressive Islamic regime. But help our listeners just to understand how oppressive this regime was.
Well, it has been the most repressive regime possibly, in modern times. Obviously, North Korea is a repressive regime. You've had China in ways be repressive. Of course, we're going back to, World War II and with the Nazis. But in modern times, and certainly in the Middle East, not only has this regime been repressive to its own people, we're talking about, Jim, several 100,000 Iranians have been murdered by this regime in the last 47 years. We're talking about the systematic rape of women, the systematic engagement in advancing their apocalyptic Islamic ideology, which I know we're going to talk about, but they've also completely destroyed the Iranian economy, the currency, just the daily life is so difficult for Iranians while this regime has enriched himself. And the other thing people don't understand is that the leadership of this regime are not even Persian. Iran has a Persian history, 3,200 plus year history of Persia. When Khomeini came in 1979, the guy is from India. His background is Indian. You have many of these leaders like Khomeini, they have an Arab background. They are not even actually Persian. So literally, it has been an occupation. Literally, it has like been a hostage takeover for 47 years. And they have systematically not only brutalized, killed their own unarmed citizens, public executions, the rape of women, the treatment of women in Islam, where Islamic clerics in Iran have declared women are like animals, that quote, God gave them to men as animals. It is beyond oppressive. But then you take out, you then factor in how much mayhem they have caused outside the country, how many Americans they have killed, going all the way back to the hostage crisis,
right,
where they took the 52 Americans hostage for 444 days, where my own family was affected by that. When we fled, my mom had gone back to Iran to finish her teaching time. She had 9 months left to get her retirement. The hostage crisis occurred. They took the embassy, and then she was stuck. She couldn't come back to the U.S. for 2.5 years. So it has affected us individually. It has affected Iranians. Many, if not all Iranians, including myself, have had family members killed at the hands of this regime. I lost 2 of my cousins at the hands of this regime. So it has affected the world and Iran for 47 years, and it's time that it is done.
You know, Shahram, we've got to keep in mind, as you pointed out, that this regime killed countless thousands who just went out on the streets to protest. I just want to read some eyewitness accounts from those in the medical field who had to treat many because of the rage meted out on them by this Iranian regime. They said and this is from townhall.com, one by one the doctors talked about the extreme distress, including nightmares, flashbacks, grief, anger, and anxiety they experienced from the grisly scenes that they can't unsee. Some confess that they became suicidal. As a doctor once said, I could not come to terms with the fact that so many warlike injuries were inflicted on my own people on the streets of my own city. The same pain echoed across the medical landscape. One said our hospital is a small facility. We had never had trauma patients before. We were not prepared to handle this number of injured people, handle them. Even the cleaning staff could not collect the blood from the hospital floor. It was that much. I was walking through the blood. I still smelled the blood in my nose. The inability to keep up with the savagery was a common theme. Hospital corridors were full of bloodied people. All the hallways and walls were covered in blood. Medical worker from Shiraz remembers, I saw exposure of the brain and abdominal organs, amputation, dismemberment, multiple knife and machete wounds, pellet wounds, and bullet entry and exit sites. The number of injured was so high, others pointed out that they tried calling every doctor and nurse they knew to come, but it was no use. About 15 minutes later, the phones were cut off. There was almost no orderlies or assistants, no IV fluids, no IV starter packs, no IV poles. No one expected this volume, and it took a long time until supplies were made available, a trauma doctor said. One other note, an ER doctor grieved the number of patients who died just because the phones were cut off. We had no access to surgical or anesthesia support. They continue to be shocked by the waves of gruesome injuries flooding their hallways. Shahram, this goes on for pages. It's so barbaric.
It's so barbaric, and as you said, you're scratching the surface of what happened just in the last 2 months with the death toll, that we don't even know.
Right.
The so-called official number by the U.S. government is now 35,000 dead within a weekend. But dissidents, inside and outside Iran believe that number is probably closer to 80 to 90,000, if not more, because how many people are injured that will probably not recover from their injuries. You mentioned some of the stuff. Children were shot with pellets. You had the other thing that report doesn't describe is then once those people were in the hospitals, I personally saw videos of Iranians who had been in the hospitals with EKG leads on their bodies with a bullet wound in their head because they were being executed inside their hospital beds by the regime. Then here's what you didn't see. What you aren't seeing is the brutality against the women. Because many of the videos that we've seen, you see body bags with men, but where are all the women that have been killed? And that and one of the things that Islam teaches is that that women, if they're dying or if they're be raped before they're murdered, that way they can't go to heaven. Because if they're raped, then they go to hell. We had reports of of women's stomachs being cut open I can't even say it on air, but basically to hide sexual assaults. They were removing body parts inside of them to hide sexual assaults. This is like demonic and barbaric to a level that you can only imagine, going back to the medieval times. And again, just think about this, Jim. These are unarmed citizens. These are people that were simply protesting. They were being hit by snipers. Snipers were sitting on buildings, taking aim at their head, their eyes, their back of their heads, their necks. And number two, these were unarmed young people. The majority of these people that were killed are young people because of the unbelievably high young population. Almost 50% of Iran is under the age of 30. So this is another level of brutality of the next generation being wiped out. So that's why I believe that this regime lost, not that they had legitimacy in any of our eyes, but after the last 2 months, they have no legitimacy and they must be taken out. That's why I don't consider this a war. People say, we're going to another war. We started a new war. We attacked an innocent country. That's ridiculous. Iran has been at war with America since 1979. This regime declared war. When I say Iran, I mean the government. This regime declared war on America in 1979 on day one and has been carrying out that war for 47 years. Unfortunately, nobody had the guts to do anything until finally President Trump did something and Netanyahu did something. I think predominantly because he had promised to do something. Mm-hmm. He had said help is on the way. And I think that he knew that if he didn't keep that word, that it would make America weak. So this is the majority of the Iranian people welcome these attacks on their nation. They want this regime to be toppled. And I think they know because of the brutality of this regime and the exports, they're bringing militias in from outside to do much of this killing. They know there's no way they can overcome this without outside help. And that's part of why this is necessary. It's really a rescue operation, not a war, in my opinion, that many Iranians feel that way, that it's really a rescue operation for humanity rather than a actual war, country to country, combatant to combatant. When you kill your own people in that way, you can't exist. It can't continue. It's not sustainable.
And so, as you point out, Yoram, I mean, there's been I've seen story after story about the jubilation in Iran over these strikes. The Iranian people, the Persians are happy that the strikes are made by Israel and the U.S. to liberate them.
Can you imagine that mentality, Jim? Can you imagine getting to the point where you welcome another nation attacking your nation? That's how desperate the Iranian people have been, and that's why they welcome, even though they know that there is a chance of civilian casualties, unfortunately, right? I mean, even though the U.S. and Israel are trying to be surgical in their strikes, there's always civilian casualties, unfortunately. They know that, but they're willing to die, just like the young people were willing to go into the streets of Iran and chant the name of Reza Pahlavi to die, to liberate their country.
Wow.
Whatever it takes, they're willing to do it.
Friends, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to hear an audio clip from the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, as he talked about the prophetic Islamist delusions. We'll be back in 1 minute. You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, are whales related to any land animals?
Chris, evolutionists think they are. In fact, this is one of their strongest arguments these days, that whales evolved from land animals with legs. Some say that the ancestor looked like a cow or maybe a wolf or a hippopotamus. Well, I think they're all wrong. Recently, the head portion of a whale fossil was found in California. It didn't have the rear portion at all, but this didn't keep evolutionists from claiming that they had small rear legs. Chris, why do we believe them? Why do even evolutionists believe them when they make up stories like this? The Bible says that God created whales on day 5 of creation week. They've always been whales, and they still are whales. Even whales go back to Genesis.
If you would like to learn more about science from a Christian perspective, please visit us on the web at www.icr.org. That's www.icr.org.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. Shahram Hadian is with us today. Friends, he's from Iran. He was born there. He's with his family. Lost extended family members through the oppressive regime of Iran. Escaped there from 1978 from their oppression. And coming here to the United States, we praise God that the Lord got a hold of his life. He did commit his life to Jesus Christ in 1999, and now is ministering, certainly warning about Islam, but also seeking to win Muslims to the Savior as well. Shahram, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth spoke recently in regard to this regime in Iran having prophetic Islamist delusions. I'm going to play what he said, and then we're going to have you comment on it. This is Secretary of War Pete Hegseth.
President Trump has also been very consistent. Crazy regimes like Iran, hell-bent on prophetic Islamist delusions, cannot have nuclear weapons. It's common sense. Many have said it, but it takes guts to actually enforce it, and our president has guts. Iran's stubborn and self-evident nuclear pursuits, their targeting of global shipping lanes, and their swelling arsenal of ballistic missiles and killer drones are no longer tolerable risks. Iran was building powerful missiles and drones to create a conventional shield for their nuclear blackmail ambitions. Let me say that again. A conventional shield for their nuclear blackmail ambitions. Our bases, our people, our allies, all in their crosshairs. Iran had a conventional gun to our head as they tried to lie their way to a nuclear bomb. It almost worked under Obama and his terrible deal, but not under this president. Turns out the regime who chanted death to America and death to Israel was gifted death from America and death from Israel. This is not a so-called regime change war, but the regime sure did change, and the world is better off for it.
Okay, that was Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. And Sharma, I'm going to have you comment on this, but including his opening line there about this prophetic Islamist delusions. What's he referring to with that, and other comments regarding what you just heard?
Well, to address their delusions, he's talking about their eschatology. Islam has a very well-formed eschatology in regards to end-time events. Now, Shia Muslims, which are about 13 to 15% of the Muslims, and Iran, of course, is the number one Shia country on the planet, they have a particularly unique bent to that eschatology. And the purpose of that eschatology is they want to bring back their Islamic Messiah that they refer to as the Mahdi, the rightly guided one. The Shias believe that he had come in the 9th century and that he is the 12th Imam, successor of Muhammad, and that he was taken and he's coming back again one day. So the Iranian regime since day one, starting with Khomeini back in 1979. In fact, a lot of people thought Khomeini was the Mahdi, and then that didn't work out when he died, right? Because if you're the Messiah, you don't die, right? Mm-hmm. But he died in 1989, which is when Khomeini, the current guy that got taken out, was the supreme leader. They believe that their role as 12ers, and by Zohran Mamdani, Jim, this is Zohran Mamdani's ideology. He's a 12er Shia. That's what he espouses. They believe that their job is to create chaos, that the more chaos and instability they create, the quicker they will hasten the coming of their Messiah.
Wow.
So when they look at Israel, Israel can't be there, because where do they believe their Messiah is coming back? They believe he's going to march onto Jerusalem from Syria, from Damascus. Israel shouldn't be there. So that messes up their plans. Christianity has to cease to exist because that messes up their plans. The Jews have to be all annihilated. That messes up their plans. So this is their mentality. So now you put weapons. I mean, look at what they did with their ballistic weapons. Look at all the Arab nations that thought they were safe and that they weren't going to get involved in this thing. And now they've attacked Bahrain, they've attacked Kuwait, they've attacked United Arab Emirates, they've attacked Oman, they've attacked Qatar, they've attacked Saudi Arabia, they've attacked Jordan, they've attacked Cyprus in the Mediterranean Sea. I mean, this is their ballistic. So imagine if they had nuclear bombs. Imagine if they, according to what I think it was Hegstead or one of them said, no, it was Witkoff. You saw the interview. Nobody covered this interview when Witkoff said that his last meeting with the Iranians, they acknowledged they had over 400 tons of uranium and that they were days away from going from 60% enrichment to 90% enrichment. And he said they admitted that they could build 11 bombs. Mm-hmm. That was Witkoff. And the Western media didn't cover that narrative. All they want to cover is the president doesn't have authority to carry this act out. So that's the part that he's talking about. Is they believe this is what they're supposed to do from God, and so if such, imagine the chaos that they will induce. The only thing I would say that I would look at differently than what Hegstead said there, Jim, was the fact that they have to understand that regime change has not been accomplished. He said that, it's already different. But in the hearts of many Iranians, it won't be different. Yes, Khomeini is dead, and now they've tasked Mojtaba, his son, to take over. Look, until these guys and have either left or have been taken out, there will not be, quote, change yet, because it's a wounded animal right now, and that's when they're the most dangerous. So we got to still pray that God's will be done here if this is indeed the timing for this thing to collapse.
Shahram, I'm looking at an article that just came out from Newsmax.com today. And by the way, friends, I need to correct myself. Earlier, when I was reading these medical accounts about Iran's horrors taking shape on the emotional accounts from doctors, that was not townhall.com. That came from the Washington Stand, WashingtonStand.com. Shahram, I'm looking at an article now from Newsmax, and this headline catches our attention. It said, Trump demands role in choosing Iran's next leader. And they indicate President Donald Trump said he must be personally involved in deciding who will lead Iran after the death now of their supreme leader. Article goes on, but is it the good idea, bad idea here?
Oh, boy. It's a very unnerving idea because for two reasons. Number one, he still has not publicly recognized Reza Pahlavi, the son of the Shah, as the legitimate voice of who the Iranians, both inside and outside Iran, are chanting for. There's not one other name that they have chanted, both inside Iran during the various... I mean, remember, January 8th and 9th happened when the regime went blackout and started killing people. That happened because of Pahlavi, in the sense of he said, go to the streets. So millions went to the streets. So he was getting 60 to 80 million views on his posts inside Iran. That many people were following him. So they were chanting Javid Shah, which means long live the Shah. They were chanting Pahlavi Barmigarde, which means Pahlavi will return. So I don't understand why the White House, even though Trump was asked about Pahlavi, and he says, well, he's a nice guy, but what does that mean? So this is concerning because what have you seen on conservative media? Newsmax, Fox, you saw it with the likes of Pompeo and Rudy Giuliani and others. They're supporting this Marxist Islamic group that's called MEK, or they go under the acronym, the National Council of Resistance of Iran, NCRI, this gal, Maryam Rajavi. These are communist Muslims. Jim, that would be like getting rid of Khomeini and bringing in Zoran Mamdani to run Iran.
Yeah.
So this is horrible if that were to happen. Many Iranians would say it's worse because now there would be a false sense of we have an ally, which you don't. So we got to pray right now. I don't know what the president means all of a sudden, where it was before it was, no, we're not doing regime change, to, well, we're going to let the Iranian people choose, which they have, to now I got to have a role in it. So I'm very concerned by this comment. I pray that he will listen to the Iranian people, not to the paid spokespersons for MEK, which, by the way, MEK stands for Mujahideen Khalq, which means the People's Jihad. This was the communist group that worked to overthrow the Shah in the 60s and 70s. My cousin was a member of MEK in Iran, and then in the first year of the regime, when Khomeini took over in 79, the Muslims turned on the Marxists, and he got blacklisted, and they were going to kill him, and he had to flee Iran. So this is the stupidity of the West if they think they can, quote, control regime change. Let the Iranian people choose. That's the best way to go forward, and that's all I can pray for right now, is I pray that they will listen to who they're chanting in Iran. And not just chanting, Jim, who they're willing to die for.
Well, and
that's what the key is.
And this is, another interesting sidelight here. I'm looking at an article right now from worthynews.com, and they're indicating that state television yesterday in Iran lost control of one of its main channels. Hackers interrupted programming and aired a message from the Crown Prince calling on the Iranian military to side with the protesters and against the Islamic Republic, and hijacked for several minutes, in which he urged military personnel, to join, with the protesters and join the Iranian people in opposing the regime. That's rather significant.
That is hugely significant. February 14th, 1.5 million Iranians came out through the world, 250,000 in Munich, 350,000 in Los Angeles, 570,000 in Toronto, Canada. They came out, and they were only chanting one name. You don't see these rallies for MEK or NCRI, this other organization. Mm-hmm. But what you see them is being propped up because of paid spokespeople like Rudy Giuliani or Pompeo or Pence or these people, and former military guys. So the people of Iran, look, here's the bottom line, because people are like, well, we don't want another king or dictator. Reza Pahlavi has said very clearly, I am not running for office. I simply want to transition. I simply want to get the people from where they are at to the point where they can freely elect their next government, not outside. Because look, if we're fair, can we be fair? The United States of America, we are terrible at regime change. Whenever we got rid of Saddam Hussein, look at Iraq today. We got rid of Hosni Mubarak in Egypt. Look at Egypt today, where the Coptic Christians are brutally oppressed under a Muslim Brotherhood supported kind of entity. We got rid of now Assad. Look at Syria. Look at Pakistan. Look at these areas. Look at Libya. We are not good at interfering in regime change because of the control, policies, money. It should be up to the people, period. And the people are saying, and then the fact that you said, the fact that they can hack state TV, and then who are they showing? Mm-hmm. They're showing the message of Reza Pahlavi. Who are they listening to? They're listening to the voice of Reza Pahlavi. Who does Pahlavi have support of outside of Iran? He has brought together the other minorities, the Kurds, the Baluch, the Loris, the Turks, that are these other ethnic minorities in Iran, because only about 55% of Iran are Persian. The rest are these minorities. By the way, interesting development, I don't know if you saw this, the Kurdish army is now leading a ground forces into Iran. So this could potentially be huge for helping the people as well. Like boots on the ground, but not ours, theirs. Wow.
We're going to take a quick break. And friends, we're going to bring this home here on U.S. soil as well to show some of the reaction that is taking place here regarding Iran's oppression. There are actually mosques that are holding memorial services uplifting the Ayatollah. Back in a minute here on Crosstalk.
In the Christian life, and especially if you're in ministry, you will suffer trials that sap your strength and cause you to ask, will I survive? In the book, Press On, You Can. Pastor Dave Barba takes a look at the causes of frustration and discouragement, including loneliness, financial stress, temptation, physical affliction, rejection, and more. With emphasis on God's frontline soldiers, you'll be reminded that through every trial, God supplies grace to overcome and the courage to press on. With helpful exhortations and applications, this book will become a lifeline for you when you feel like stepping out of the race. Press On, You Can. Available for a donation of $12 by calling 1-800-729-9829. 1-800-729-9829.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. With us today is Shahram Hadian from Truth in Love Ministry. His website, tilministry.com. tilministry.com. TIL stands for Truth in Love. tilministry.com. Now, friends, we could go on and on as to what's happening right now in Iran, in the Middle East, and so forth, but I also want to bring this home. And what's interesting to me is that there are mosques on U.S. soil that are mourning the death now of Iran's Ayatollah. One is within just, about 30 miles from the White House in Manassas, Virginia, a mosque there posting a eulogy calling Iran's supreme leader, who is now dead. Our leader described his death as a martyrdom. And Shahram, we're going to comment on this. I'm going to play a clip from California, and then we're going to have you comment also on what's going on in Dearborn, Michigan. But, why do we allow this to operate? Would Iran knowingly let a Christian church operate in Tehran? But here on U.S. soil, we've got those who are mourning the death of the Ayatollah and calling upon, for others to go into martyrdom?
Yeah, it is an unbelievable indictment of where we have come as a nation in either our fear of addressing these things or political correctness or, quote, we don't want to infringe on religion. This is not a religious freedom issue. You have, as you said, a mosque that is operating, a Shia mosque that has the message of the Islamic leadership. So, okay, if we are saying publicly Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism globally, then why would we not invest these, quote, clerics and these mosques and find out, do they have funding that is coming from Iran? I guarantee you they do. I guarantee you they have funding that has come from either Iran directly or from their proxies through back channels. But it is incredulous that you have these statements that unless people hear them, unless people actually hear what they're saying, mm-hmm. and they're shedding tears, all throughout our nation, Islamic scholars are opining about the killing of Khomeini and that's their leader. Well, wow. That means, okay, then we should be dealing with them as such. And yet I don't see the political will to do such a thing. And as you said, this would never be allowed inside a Muslim country, where if you had a church speaking against the leader of some Islamic country, zero would that be allowed, and that person will be arrested immediately.
Yeah. Now, I from here, I want to, so that's happening in the east. Let's go to California right now, the other end of the country, and there we have a Muslim cleric also paying homage to the Ayatollah, now deceased, and prays that he himself and others would also exit life as a martyr. Let's listen to this audio clip.
They are crowning their life and their achievement with martyrdom. And this is what we say every night in this dua that we recite, dua ul-iftitah, that we recite every night. Part of the dua, we ask Allah, we tell Him, وَقَتْلًا فِي سَبِيلِكَ فَوَفِّقْ لَنَا. Allow us to be martyred in your path, in your way. Give us this blessing. I personally wish, and this is my prayers for so many years, especially when I go to the holy shrines, I want to exit this life with martyrdom, not dying on my bed in my home or in the hospital. Shahada, martyrdom, in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the way that He wants me to live. Again, I ask you to join me in reciting Surah Al-Fatiha for the martyrs.
Okay, so then he wants them to, pray the prayer of becoming a martyr, Shahram.
Well, let's discuss what he's talking about with. He said the shaheed, the martyr. Why do they want to be martyrs? Why do they believe that this is the best way to go out of this life? It goes back to the understanding that in Islam there is no hope of salvation. No Muslim has guarantee whether they're going to end up in heaven or not based only upon their life or their works, because Islam is based on works. So why would they be so interested in martyrdom? Because according to Islam and according to the Prophet of Islam in the Hadith, in the traditions of Muhammad, he said that martyrdom is the only guarantee, not only of salvation for the martyr, but of 70 of his relatives. That 70 of his relatives get to go to heaven with the martyr when the martyr sheds his blood. So this, when they say in the act of martyrdom, they're talking about jihad. And jihad is the very textbook definition, according to Islamic law, of jihad, is warfare against non-Muslims to establish the religion. So they're not just killing for the sake of killing or dying for the sake of dying. They're dying to establish religion, the so-called religion of Islam and their so-called God, Allah. Now, again, just context. Like, if you were listening to that, right, you expect to hear that, Jim, from some mosque, let's say in Pakistan, or some mosque in Libya or in Syria. This is in California. Mm-hmm. This is in the United States of America, where they're saying this is how we want to go out.
You know, let me bring up, not to be outdone by either coast, Dearborn, Michigan. Michigan Henry Ford Community College professor Ali Akbar Shadid, he reportedly posted this, quote, "Trump made a huge mistake by killing our leader, Ali Khamenei. We are going to continue on his path. We're going to hold his blood and ideology and teach it to our children." Further, Shahram, it's reported that an Islamic entity in Dearborn held a memorial service for the Ayatollah as well. And during the service, he was referred to as the great leader of our time. And the cleric, evidently, they're also called the Statue of Liberty, Lucifer. But the point I'm trying to make here, from coast to coast and all throughout this country, this is what's coming from the mosque that are on U.S. soil. And Shahram, it's so deeply disturbing.
It's deeply disturbing. Honestly, people should have a righteous anger about this, and people should demand of their state and federal government to investigate this, because, by the way, the mosque in Dearborn Heights that you're talking about is a Shiite mosque led by an imam named Muhammad Ali Elahi. This is the guy, he eulogized Khamenei right after he was taken out. And this guy, who is we can easily connect him to the Iranian regime. He actually worked in 2019. I was supposed to be speaking at a Baptist church there in Dearborn on the anniversary of 9/11, where I was going to go share my testimony. We had even invited Muslims to come. He worked with interfaith groups in that area to put pressure on the Baptist church, and the elders of that church caved and canceled my event at the behest of this public pressure by Elahi and the interfaith cult Christians, and the congresswoman from that area. So this isn't just any person. This is Elahi. You know, he's marched at events with Michigan's Governor Whitmer, with Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. These are people who are opining and mourning the death of a butcher. Only God knows how many lives Khamenei was responsible for killing inside and outside Iran. But I could guess that it's in the hundreds of thousands. This is a man that was had so much blood on his hands, and anybody that can mourn for him, let alone inside the United States, how is that not being investigated if the country of Iran and their leader is the largest state sponsor of terrorism? That is an act of war, and these people should not only be investigated, but they should be kicked out of this nation. Mm. These mosques should be shut down. But, I don't know, Jim. I don't think we have the political will or the spiritual courage. Yeah. Because many Christians will say, oh, no. Islam is just a religion. We have to respect it. No, I don't respect an evil ideology. I don't respect an antichrist spirit that is Islam. And I certainly don't embrace or accept or respect these type of so-called Islamic leaders that are saying all of us should want to kill more non-Muslims and establish Islam. That's an act of war, in my opinion. This is an act of war. They've declared war.
Shahram Hadian with us, tilministry.com, tilministry.com. Shahram, I've got two more issues I want to get in before the break. And friends, if you'd like to start getting online here, our number 800-733-9829, 800-733-9829. Tuesday, the Texas voters there was an advisory referendum on the ballot on whether or not they should prohibit Sharia. And we understand it was about 95% said yes, we should prohibit it. 5% said no. And I find that number kind of interesting because both you and Usama Dakdak have talked about, that 5 to 6% range is when Muslims declare we've got the upper house.
Yeah, that is like you think that question would have been like 100%, right? Or 99%, right? But the fact that you have a percentage of Texans saying, no, we don't have a problem with Sharia, either shows their ignorance or it shows that they have that voting block. And yeah, typically somewhere around 6 to 8%, they feel like they can go to the upper house, especially if they have political power and influence. And certainly in Texas, I'm going to be back in Texas in 2 weeks again, then later in April, then later in May. I mean, the Lord it is waking people up. You have this Sharia caucus now, right, that is formed. Mm-hmm. I think it's 40, what was the latest, 40 members or something like that now in Congress. So I do praise God that there is at least this awareness, Jim, because 2 years ago, it seemed like nobody wanted to talk about Islam. Nobody wanted to talk about, other than you and Crosstalk, very few people would talk about Islam, would talk about Sharia, would talk about what's going on. So something has shifted, and I do pray this is part of the wake-up call, but it is troubling that number wasn't 100%, and Texas better realize that they are cream of the crop right now. They're a top prize for the Islamic movement, not only in America, but globally, because they feel like if they can flip Texas, they can flip America. Yeah. And 2 mosques are going up every month in Texas, and Dallas, Houston, they are number 4 and number 2 in as far as Muslim population. Sugar Land, Texas is now like the Muslim population there is in double digits. It's no longer in single digits, it's in double digits. So that tells you that they're getting closer to the upper house.
We're just a minute before break. I want to get this in as well, Shahram, and that is that U.S. security agencies on high alert against a domestic terror attack. Intelligence, law enforcement officials studying Iran's well-documented terror playbook to prepare, one that includes cyber operations, targeted violence, information, warfare, reports CBN.com. Are you concerned about these attacks on U.S. soil from within, domestic terror from within?
100%, Jim. Unfortunately, 100%. We've been concerned about this for years, and certainly I feel, even though you have seen Iran launch, attacks against the Arab countries, we're praying for the people in Israel. I mean, my heart goes out to the people in Israel who are willing to put themselves on the line for the Iranian people. It's a heart of gratitude right now for the Israelis that have been killed, obviously for our U.S. service members that have been killed. The Iranian people are truly grateful, but I think the greatest threat globally within the United States comes from these sleeper cells, comes from these entities in these mosques that are fundamentalizing, people would use the term radicalism, but they're fundamentalizing Muslims. And you saw this with the Austin attack with the guy from Senegal. Yeah.
Friends, we'll take a quick break. I could talk for another couple hours here with Shahram, but we're going to go to your calls, your questions. Please perform your questions concisely and get right to your point. We'll take as many calls as we can here at Crosstalk. Back in a minute here on the VCY American Network.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brennan House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. Well, America and Israel have gone now after Iran, and the regime seems to be falling very quickly. But this could go on, some experts say, for weeks or months. But it's interesting to note how Iran is now going after other Muslim nations, attacking them as well. Will this cause many of those nations that once leaned toward Iran now to back away from the hardliners? And if so, how will this lay the foundation for the Abraham Accords? How will this allow for the coming age of peace? One that President Trump is working on with his International Peace Board, but also something that seems to be implied in Daniel chapter 8 and other places, that the Antichrist, and we don't know who that is yet, will come in riding on the platform of peace. It's a false peace before he himself turns to war in order to establish his New World Order. But certainly the stage is set for Bible prophecy to be fulfilled.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. Shahram Hadian with us today. Again, friends, his background, he was raised in Iran, born and raised in Islam, and escaped that oppressive Islamic regime. Committed his life to Jesus Christ in 1999 after being here in the United States, and we praise God for that. But just sharing from his experience, his background, which is in law enforcement, it's as an officer, as a teacher, as a coach, as a pastor, hearing his heartbeat. You'll find info on his website, TIL Ministry, that stands for Truth and Love, TILministry.com. Let's go to the phone lines. Lakeland, Florida. Debbie, you're on the air.
Hi, I have a comment and a question. I, too, am very distressed that President Trump is saying he has to be involved in who the next leader is. And I am concerned about him dismissing Reza Pahlavi out of hand. Mm-hmm. However, I wonder if he is kind of playing it so that he doesn't seem to be endorsing somebody. And that may
okay. Is that your question?
create issues. Yeah,
okay?
Yes, that's possible.
Great, thank you, Shahram.
Well, I agree with that. I would agree with that assessment, because before, when he wasn't saying anything or endorsing Pahlavi, we said, okay, it's because they don't want to be seen as picking or choosing. Mm-hmm. That's why these comments would be concerning, in that they need to stay in that posture. Do not come across as that this is our choice, or that this is who we're supporting. Let the people decide, and let the transitions decide. If Pahlavi has the support that he's showing that he does, it will go forward. So I agree with the caller that it's kind of like a double standard right now. Just
thank you, Debbie.
To the initial point. You got it.
Let's go to Sally in Sheboygan. You're on the air.
Yes. Concerning danger for American citizens and Christians, if we go to a church that has no undercover carriers, no plan, even though it's very small and just starting out, how much should we just hunker in and pray and not go at this time with this going on? Is there danger?
Well, Sally,
that's a great question.
It's a good question, and churches will have security teams, etc. But I just don't forsake going to the assembly of God's house with fellow believers. Certainly, that is something we need to do. We need to be vigilant at that same time. But I don't encourage you to stop going to church.
Well, what if they don't have any kind of plan, though? They're just a new church starting out. There's no undercover carriers or any. Well, you know what I mean? Yeah,
concealed carriers is what you're saying. Shahram, if you want to comment on this, go ahead, Shahram. You've been a police officer.
I agree with what Jim's saying. I think that we don't forsake the assembly. I would obviously encourage you to talk to the church leadership. I'd encourage you to talk to them about that there should be a need for greater vigilance security, because churches are targets. I would say, if you know people who, as long as the church doesn't prohibit you or people you know from carrying, we encourage that you can, if you're lawfully able to conceal carry or have trained. But I would talk to the leadership and of course pray, because the greatest protection is God's angels surrounding that. So let us not forsake the assembly if that's where you feel called to be. If you're not called to be there, that's a different issue. But if you feel called to be at that fellowship, then pray. Go through those steps first and pray. And Lord willing, His protection is there.
Thank you for the call. Let's go to Jamie next. You're on the air, Jamie.
Hi. On Monday, I think it was, I saw a video of people in New York City cheering for the airstrikes against Iran. There was Iranian and Israeli flags being waved together.
Yes.
Did these people just change their minds? And then also, Shahram, what age were you when you came from Iran?
Thank you.
I was 9 when I left Iran, so I was old enough that I remember. I was the youngest of 3, so I remember Iran very well. As far as what happened in New York, we saw it across the country. Those are not the people that have changed. That is the diaspora. Those are the Iranians that are outside the country that have been extremely supportive of Israel, the Jewish people. And what you saw around the world, Jim, was Iranians going to U.S. embassies and putting flowers and thank you cards for Israel carrying out this attack, because they know that there's no other way that they can be done with this regime except for outside help. So that is the diaspora. That is not the pro-Islam crowd that has changed their mind. Those are the ones who have recognized that this regime is evil, and they needed the support of Israel and the United States in this case.
Thank you. Well, let's go to Cheryl in Indiana. Cheryl, you're on the air.
Yes, I've been listening to this, and I just want to, maybe I'm ignorant and need to be educated on this, but I just want to know why we cannot deport anybody in this country, whether they're a naturalized citizen or not, who supports our enemies, or who is, in this case, the radical Iranian government, and that. Why we cannot deport a professor or somebody who believes in this stuff and is clearly is violating the oath that they took when they became naturalized citizens here to support our Constitution and our democracy, when they're clearly anti-American and anti-democracy.
Yeah. I tell you what, we're down to a minute and a half, and I want Shahram to have time to answer that. And keep in mind, some of these officials are taking their oath upon a Quran as well. Go ahead, Shahram, and respond to her question about deporting.
Great point, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great point. They've taken their oath on the Quran. But as far as our government, to the caller's point, if they're a naturalized citizen, as I am, you can have your naturalization stripped. If you're here as a resident alien, you can have your status stripped. So I agree with the caller that we need to get bolder. Going back to the beginning of the show, that's why I'm concerned who the next person is coming into the Department of Homeland Security, to Immigration Enforcement, because that's exactly what they should be doing. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the Naturalization Department should be looking at these people and saying, we got to get them out. We got to denaturalize them and get them out, kick them out. I support that 100% with people that are showing this is not freedom of speech. This is sedition and treason to our nation, and they're saying they're siding with an enemy of America. That is a clear-cut case of removal. So I support the caller. I think that should happen.
Thank you, Cheryl, for the call. And friends, we're out of time for additional phone calls. Shahram Hadian, our guest today on Crosstalk, talking about fighting against Iran's oppression. And we see it not only happening there on the soils of Iran, but also what's happening within the setting of mosque here across the United States as well. Shahram's website is tilministry.com, stands for Truth in Love, TILministry.com. And Shahram, thank you so much for your insights and analysis of things going on. We appreciate all you had to share with us today on the broadcast.
Thank you, Jim. It's always a blessing and a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
And friends, again, check out the website. He's got many, many materials there to be of help. TILministry.com. Friends, thank you so much for joining us here today on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Take Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.